Hi everyone, my name is Nicolas Gonzalez, and I'll be presenting to you my final project, which is on social media influence on online shopping and notification importance. And what I mean by that is if you have multiple notifications on your phone from different social media platforms, which one are you most likely to open first? So we start off with our introduction with a little bit of background on where I got the data and what the data is showing. So the data set for the assignment was retrieved from Data World. I used two different data sets and I merged them in order to create a larger and more complex and complete data set. The responses in the data sets were the result of two different surveys for a total of 12,000 participants in the USA. So when I merged them, it was over 12,000 participants or respondents. And both data sets were updated last in 2017. So these are the questions that I'm aiming to answer in this presentation with the use of different tools, Excel, Python, and Power BI, or Tableau, sorry. What social media is used or cared about the most in terms of notification importance? What social and or social media platform has the most influence on online shopping? Is there a correlation between the social media users care about the most in terms of notifications, and which one has the highest influence on online shopping? What segment type, which I'll show exactly what it is on Excel, has the most participants, and how do male versus females compare in terms of their use of social media platform? So we start off by Excel with cleaning and creating the pivot chart. So on the left, we have our raw data. So what we did to get the clean data, which is on the right, is merge data sets, since we were using two different ones. We removed what I deemed unnecessary data, and I go over that as well. Clean formatting. So right here, we can actually see that there's like red rows and columns, which we didn't really need. We removed some decimals. Instead of having 3, I left 1 decimal place, thought it was cleaner. And then we changed the percentage data type that we see here is a decimal to actual percentage data types. So if we go to Excel, this is the raw data. We're going to move that here. And what I did was, if we see the whole data, we see that here it just starts cutting off because that's where the next question keeps going. So one data set is bigger than the other one. And what I did is I just cleaned the formatting. So I got rid of all these highlighted rows and columns, and I just made it all the same. I changed this to an actual percentage type instead of just general with a decimal, and I reduced the decimal spaces. And what I also did as well is I changed the segment type. So this one had more specific, the segment description. I took all those out and I just focused on the segment type that was common in both. So gender, mobile, and university, and web. So I kept that. And we see here in the working data that it looks way cleaner than it did in the raw data when they were just thrown together. And now they're actually merged and easy to work with. So sorry, I did keep segment description. I just, I organized it. So this is the first question, and then on the bottom is the next question. Next up, we have the pivot table and the pivot chart. So what I did here is essentially I used the social media platforms and the segment types. We can see here the questions, segment types, and then the social media platforms right here. And what we're looking at is we're just trying to briefly see if there's a relationship between the platform with the highest influence on online shopping and the social platform that is looked at the most in terms of notifications. So here on the left, we have social media platforms that have the highest influence on online shopping. Keep in mind, however, that in both surveys, the actual social media platforms are in both questions or surveys is Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. So LinkedIn, none, and Twitter are not in both. So this is using all of them. So we can see here that these two bars, the blue is Instagram and this one is none, have the highest influence. And what it's basically saying is none is that no social media platform has influence on that person's online shopping. But if we had to choose one, it would be Instagram, however, is barely close. So it's either no social media platform has influence on their online shopping or Instagram does. And when we look here, we see a huge difference. So we can see Snapchat is extremely important when it comes to notifications. So if you have a notification from Snapchat, but you have a bunch of different other notifications from Facebook, Instagram, etc., you're going to open Snapchat first. And then Instagram is coming afterwards. But Snapchat is very important when it comes to notifications. Well, Instagram has a slight influence on online shopping, but it's either none of them do, most likely, or Instagram does. So we can see that there's not really a relationship so far. Snapchat on one side, Instagram on the other side. But we'll get into more detail. So now we're going into Jupyter, Python, and Notebook. So Jupyter Notebook and then Python, sorry. So we can do our Python coding. So we start off by importing Pandas library, and then we connect the dataset from the computer to Jupyter Notebook. So here, social media is the name of my data frame. And then we're reading the location of where I saved it on my MacBook. And then we're just calling social media. Now I'll show that as well. Next, we're outputting statistical details. So I just wanted to see, most importantly, the minimum and the maximum number. And we see here that 5,000 is, and we'll keep that in mind when we keep going and show some of the visualizations that were made in Python. And next, we're just dropping all the NaN values. So we see here that we have all of these unwanted rows and columns, so we don't need any of them. So we want to get rid of those and also fill in the zeros. And we did that here by doing social media, the name of the data frame, so social underscore media, not drop NA. We're just dropping all of them. And now we get into visualization. So we're importing matplotlib inline. So we're importing as pandas as PD, and then we're just essentially filling out the information to create a bar chart, which is right here. And now what we're looking at here is the most used and or looked at social media platform, counting all the segment types. So we're including all the segment types, or in the counts, we're including all of those. So all the participants in both questions, as well as all the things that they could have voted for. Again, the only ones that are common in both questions are Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, but this is just including all of them to see how they line up. So then here are the social media platform, and here we have the count of users, and we can see again that Snapchat has a high influence, or is looked at the most in total when we look at everything. Then we have Instagram, and then we have actually Facebook, and then none. But none was only in part of one of the surveys, and it still has quite a big a voting amount, considering it's only in one of the surveys and not both. It's almost the same as Facebook. But we can see here that Snapchat again is just not so much of an influence. Well, we don't actually know that because this is just counting the total, but we see here that it's very used, Snapchat, compared to the other social media platforms. Something that I can relate to. The second one, we have the histogram. So we're actually importing Seaborn. So we're not using Pandas visualizations, or Matplotlib, visualizations. We're using Seaborn visualizations, or just for this one visualization. So I made a histogram, and what this is telling us is how many count totals fall into which range of count. So for example, 0 to 1,000, how many times is the count total? For example, Instagram, how many times in total have people voted between 0 to 1,000? So what I mean, for example, if we go back to our Excel sheet and we look at our working data, we can see here that the first question, mobile respondents, when they were asked, if you have a notification on your phone from different social media platforms, which one are you going to open first? So mobile respondents, Instagram, they voted, there was a total of over 2,500 votes. So how many times does that happen? How many times does that happen in our data set? Well, the most common is 0 to 1,000. It's a big gap. I changed the X and Y count range because I wanted to include all of them. And this is where we have 5,000. And when we looked at the other statistical details, we saw that 5,000 was the highest count vote, or count total. We see that we don't actually have any in 4,000, but most of them are between 0 and 1,000, and then 1,000, 2,000. and then we have one all the way over here, 5,000. So now we're going to get into Tableau, and now we're going to really start digging at the questions that we stated at the beginning of the slideshow, and trying to answer them. So we start off with a bar chart. Again, this is the same one that we actually did in Excel. This is just a little bit more clean, visually appealing, but it still answers the same question. So what social media platform has the most influence on online shopping, and which one is checked out the most in terms of notifications? And we see, again, as we mentioned before, that Instagram and none are very, very close to each other when it comes to the first question, which has influence on online shopping the most. And then on the right here, we see the Snapchat again, just very high importance when it comes to notifications. Again, this is including all the options, not just Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. And when we come here, we see that, so it's confirmed that none is actually the one that has the most influence on online shopping. So most of the people basically said that they don't get influenced by social media platform for their online shopping. Most of the time, however, Instagram is right before it. So it's either none or Instagram. And then, Facebook, but most of the time it's either going to be none or Instagram. However, when we look at the notifications, we see that it's a huge gap, right? Almost 12,000 compared to the next number, which is 5,000 on Instagram. So Snapchat is just very, very important when it comes to notifications. This is including all of them, but we see, again, just the same as Excel, Snapchat has a very high importance on notifications, while Instagram has a slight importance or influence on online shopping. Here we're looking by side-by-side circles. So we want to see where most of the participants of the surveys, which segment type are they? Where do we have the most from? So we have gender, right? So we basically, do we know that if the participants are either male or female, which were the only options? Next, we have mobile respondents, so people on their phones. We have university students, and now lastly, we have web people on their computers that answer the surveys. But we see that for both questions, most of them were university students, which would make sense if we're talking about social media, specifically social media platforms. That a lot of them would be university students. They're the phones the most. And if we come over here and we open side-by-side circles, we see that there's a very big gap for university students. So essentially what this is telling us is that out of both questions or out of both surveys, most of the participants, almost all the participants were university students. So now we're doing the first question, again, using a horizontal bar, but now we're actually breaking it down by segment type, and we're also using only the social media platforms that are common for both questions. So we're looking at what social media platform with the most online shopping influence and which one is checked the most by segment type. So we're including gender, mobile, university, and web. And if we come here and we look at it, so the first question is online shopping influence, and we see that it's essentially Instagram again, right? We're not including none, so we can see Instagram is for each segment type is the highest, except for web. We didn't have any participants that were from the web here. And then here, when it comes to notification importance, we see that again, Snapchat is huge, especially in between the mobile, right on your phone. Makes sense. Snapchat, you don't use it on the computer, you use it on your phone. And gender. So if we knew that they were male or female. Interestingly though, not so much for university students, which I thought would be the highest since we have so many of those participants, but not so much. And this is categorized by total, by the sum count. And most of them are between gender and mobile, even though most of the participants were from university. So we see here, by segment type, we can see that mobile and gender are the highest participants that check Snapchat for their notification importance, while Instagram follows, and very low numbers for web. Again, since nobody really uses web either on their computers. I mean, on their computers, they don't use these apps as much. The respondents were using their computers, but maybe they're just using their computers a lot, and they use it more than their phones. Therefore, they don't use these social media platforms as much. And then we see that Instagram is the highest for university, mobile, and gender when it comes to this influence on online. All right, so we just looked at the third visualization, which was the horizontal graphs, and now we're going to jump on to the last one. So next one, we have the comparison of male and female users for social media platforms. So how do they line up for each question, and based on the social media platform that was common for both surveys. So we'll show that here. So right here we can see that, looking at it kind of quickly, we can see that they're pretty close when it comes to the numbers, to the percentages. We can see here, this is the only one that stands out the most for Instagram. So this is 0.48, while females, and while males have 0.24. So females have double. And what that's basically telling us is that females are more they're influenced the most by Instagram when it comes to social media platform, or influenced the most by social media, Instagram specifically when it comes to their online shopping, while males are also influenced by Instagram the most when it comes to online shopping. However, females are about almost half the time influenced by Instagram alone. So if they're going to be influenced by a social media platform for their online shopping, almost half the time is going to be by Instagram, while males is going to be almost about a quarter. And then if we look at the rest of the numbers for Facebook and Snapchat, they're pretty close. Same down here, we can see that the numbers are pretty close. And again, Snapchat is very strong. So Snapchat takes up more than 50% of the notification importance when it comes to social media notification badges. So Snapchat for females is 0.56, while males is 0.59. So very dominant in both male and females when it comes to Snapchat. They both care a lot about their Snapchat notifications, while females are influenced the most by Instagram when it comes to online shopping. Same as males, but females are very, very influenced by Instagram for their online shopping. And here we have the quick dashboard, and I'll go into it as well. And we have our, like our legend here, which we'll use to interact a little bit with it. So we come here, you can see here a dashboard. And if we look at Snapchat, just to focus on it a little bit, we can see that, right here, we see that very, very low when it comes to online shopping influence, very high when it comes to notification importance. And we can see here when it comes to the influence on online shopping is very low in all of them. And notifications is extremely high in all of them, all the segment types. I mean, when I say all of them, except for web. Web is very low for both. But we see here that it's even, when we break it down by segment type, it's important, very important when it comes to notifications. And we break it down by female and male voters, we see that it's very important again. Very dominant. But we see here very, very, very small values when it comes to influence on online shopping. And when we look at Instagram, we see here that, yes, it has an influence on online shopping. And here we'll see that, yeah, it's important when it comes to notifications. When we break it down by segment type and we take out none, we see that it's the highest, right? Online shopping influence. And we can see here that it's a little bit important when it comes to notification importance. And we see down here, we can see with the percentages that is very, very, has a very high influence on the female voters. Well, not so much for the male voters. And we see here that Instagram, not very important when it comes to notification badges compared to the high number that Snapchat has. So what can we conclude? Basically, we conclude that Instagram has the highest influence on online shopping, while no social media platform was the highest. If we had to choose one, it would be Instagram. Snapchat notifications are open the most across all segment types as well as genders, female and male. University students were the segment type that answered the most or had the most participants. Males and females have similar usage and influence with each social media platform. Instagram and online shopping influence is an exception, as we saw here. Very high for females, well, not so high for males, about half. And there's no correlation in what social media platform has the most influence on online shopping and which one has its notifications viewed the most, right? We saw that Instagram when we had to choose a social media platform that has influence on online shopping, Instagram was the most. However, it wasn't significantly influence the online shopping. But if we had to choose one, it'd be Instagram. But Snapchat was very, very dominant when it comes to notification importance. And lastly are my references. In here I'll put the webcast recording link, or I might upload it to YouTube and merge both videos, whatever works best. But this will be the important link. Thank you.